Well, every time I have an interview like this, I pinch myself thinking, I can't believe I'm talking to this person. Again, it just happens over and over. These people who have had such a significant impact on my life growing up, especially through my 20s and 30s and then into my 40s. Now I'm 55 years old, just turned 55. I've been with Praise Charts the whole way, and always had a fascination with people who laid the foundation, especially in the 80s and 90s, with many worship songs that became like the bedrock, the garden out of which Praise Chart started. And then Chad Gentry and I got together. We started this podcast called 90s Worship. And for me, okay, truthfully, this podcast is really just a free ticket for me to have a conversation with people I am like totally fascinated by. So you get to listen in. Unfortunately, Chad can't be with us for this one, but Michael Gungor, the thing about him is, and this is what I love about people like Michael. You might agree with him or disagree with him about various things, theology, or I don't like that song, or how come you did that lyric? I mean, we can get into all of that. But people that innovate and that color outside of the lines, there's no way that they do that without ruffling feathers. I mean, and this is just the way our world advances, is by having people come into our paths that are willing to shake things up a little bit. And I want you to not have your guard on. Just take some time to listen to a conversation between two guys talking. Don't get easily offended. Just listen, embrace, contemplate, maybe allow yourself to be challenged a little bit. Let somebody even have a different thought than you might have, because you might find that I think differently than you. Certainly, Michael might come across like that, but I just love the conversation. So anyways, just wanted to put that out there. I've never quite said it quite like this, but here we go. This will be a great one. This is Michael Gungor. Well, I bet you can't wait to get into this conversation, Hayes. Like, where did that all come from? I don't know.
Oh, I'm excited. I love it.
Yeah, I am like truly excited. And I wanted to just start out by saying how grateful I am for a person like you who's been willing to take risks in your life, to lay it on the line, to expose yourself, certainly through the podcasts that you have done and interviews and talking and conferences. And you've it's like you've peeled open your heart and laid out the pain and the joy, and you let us all look in this internet generation that we live in. But I don't know how many people say thank you. And I just wanted to start by saying that I'm really grateful for the legacy that you have paved, even as messy as it is. So just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you so much. It's really a kind thing to say. I'm grateful to be here.
Awesome. Well, do you mind, Michael, if I'm going to walk you through a journey that I have that's going to sort of cover the last 30 years-ish or so, take you into your early era where I would remember you from, but I'm also interested in like the pathways that you went through and then some of the current things that you're working on. So let's just go into it. We got about 45 minutes and I'm sure we'll take up all of it. The first, maybe I've got these headings that I'm going to kind of go on. So the first one is the roots of 90s worship. I mean, that's what we're all here for. 90s worship. I remember seeing you in Washington, Northwest Washington. That's where I'm from, at the Christian Music Summit. It had to be late 90s or early 2000s. You were on stage. I don't even know if you would remember that, but it felt like, yeah.
I mean, it would have been early 2000s probably, but pretty early 2000s, yeah.
Very early in my life, early in Praise Chart's life. I'm sure you sang, you say so. I think
Friend of God,
Friend of God, all of that. I mean, that's where I want to sort of go around is How tell me about your journey of going from nobody knows you from nowhere to suddenly you're on this big stage in this growing massive Christian music industry. Can you just give me a little bit of a snapshot of what that was like?
Yeah. I grew up in central Wisconsin, and my dad was a pastor. We were in a tiny town called Marshfield, very Lutheran, kind of conservative white town.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was this like kind of crazy, charismatic Puerto Rican dude that we had this church on the edge of town that, we had revival services. We were singing all the Brownsville stuff. We were doing all
Mm-hmm.
the having late night worship nights all the time. So it's where I learned to play music.
Yeah.
It's where I learned to improvise. It's where I learned to worship. It's where I learned like how music and spirituality have always been one and the same for me.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
it all started in that weird little town on the edge of town with this strange thing that was happening.
We just interviewed Lyndell Cooley, who is like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
sure
watched
he
it.
had an influence on you. It's such a fascinating guy to talk
Yeah,
to. And when you talk about improvisation, I mean, he's the guy who probably was picking out songs as he's leading them because, that's what you
yeah,
do in revival. You just
yeah.
go for it.
I love
So,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to like jump the gun with this, but why I reached out,
Yes.
uh, or somebody had told me about what you guys were doing, and then they
Yeah.
connected us on Facebook, and I watched and I reached out. I was like, "This is great. I love that you guys are bringing this stuff back out into the light." I actually in 2020 had the idea of like, because I was kind of immersing myself in some old 90s worship
Yeah.
stuff, and I was like, there was something about this that was special. It was super formative for me, but
Mm-hmm.
I was like, there's something that I'm missing about the current landscape of culture, religion, church, that there was something about that that I can't find right now. I was like, I wanted
Yeah.
to do something like a 90s worship night or
Yes.
something. Um,
Yes.
I never did it. So to see that you guys are
Yes.
doing it, I was like, oh, this is amazing that this exists.
And you're a part
But
of it. You're not just watching it. You're a part of it, the whole story. So there you go.
mm, well, thank you.
Continue. Continue.
Um, yeah, but there was something about uh well, I don't want to jump the gun. Where do you want
Yeah.
while we're in history mode? I was going to
What?
jump out of history mode, but we can.
No, no. Let's just go. I mean, let's park it in around. You got friend of God, say so, then beautiful things. These are sort of like the three, or I'm sure there's more, but a few songs that people would really remember as they go back, and even say so and friend of God. Those were mostly Israel Houghton really carried. I feel like he carried those songs, even though you were a part of writing them. I mean, he's a person I remember singing them, and then so just bring me into that world of what you stumbled on. I don't know if you were seeking it or it found you.
Oh yeah, I guess I never carried the story into how I started leading. Yeah.
Yes.
So at first I was just leading at the little church. I was leading like I started in the twos and threes, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a little band in the 2 and 3 year old church service called the Heavenly Sounds, and
Mm-hmm.
and then grew up through youth group and then became a worship leader at the main service. And then we moved to Tulsa, started a church there, and I became kind of the primary worship leader as a senior in high school, freshman in college. That church like blew up, and that's where I
Mm.
made my first like worship record for that church
Mm-hmm.
because there was like thousands of college kids coming to this like this worship service and this church thing happening in Tulsa. And then from there, I got hired to go finish my college because I was trying to go to college and do all that at the same time. And ended up going up to Western Michigan University and got this job offer at this big church up there.
Mm-hmm.
Got it like I was 20 years old, having a staff and a interns and like suddenly
Yeah.
I went from this like leading worship barefoot more in the 90s,
Yes.
like Kent Henry,
Yes.
uh, uh, Hosanna. We did a lot of Hosanna stuff, but Maranatha, like just like Jesus, to like,
Yeah.
I, they gave me a clothing budget. They like, you got to dress a little nicer. You got
A
to go to
clothing
like
budget.
Banana Republic and buy some clothes and
Uh-huh.
put shoes on and
Wow.
like read some leadership books
Yes, yes.
and like become a mega church guy, staff
Right.
member,
Right.
which was interesting and stretching. And I had great experiences and I got to put in my hours leading worship. Holy cow. Because it was like
Huh.
7 services a week sort of deal.
Wow.
And so that's where I really, I spent so much time on stage just leading
Yeah.
worship, uh, doing that. And then from there recorded I got signed with Integrity, and
Mm.
that's where I wrote Friend of God with Israel.
Okay.
And then I wrote Say So for that church. A lot of my early church music was written for that congregation.
Right.
And that was kind of the launching pad of
Yeah.
all that.
And then you're touring around the world doing
Hmm.
everything, churches, stadiums, sanctuaries. Did it all like catch up on you, wear you out? What was going on inside? Because it seems like another world was forming on the inside as this is all going on the outside. Is it fair to say
Yeah.
something like that?
Well, this is probably it's definitely part of what my thoughts about 90s worship are versus what kind of worship has gone.
Yes.
I have to admit that it's been colored by my own personal experience, of course.
All right.
I don't have an objective view of this. I have a subjective. I know what it was like to move from the worship nights with my friends and my
Mm.
acoustic guitar to being on literally a stadium
Yes.
stage with like pyrotechnics and screens and like selling crazy amount of CDs at the merch stage. I felt the transition between that and what
Yeah.
was lost,
Yes.
what was gained, what shifted in emphasis in my surroundings at least, and I needed, um and what was happening internally through that was what is true here? Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
What is this all a ruse? Is this all
Mm-hmm.
is this a power play, or is
Mm-hmm.
this real? Is this
Mm-hmm.
like, and I had enough experience of something real about it to stay
Mm-hmm.
around for a long time. But I also began to see things the deeper that I got into the industry
Mm-hmm.
that were just industry things. They were power things. They were
Yeah.
hypocrisy things. They were like, oh, this
Right.
is just a business for a lot of people,
Right.
um,
Yes.
which was disconcerting and heartbreaking on some level. And then challenged, like, where do I sit in this? Do I play along with this, or do I call it out, or do
Yeah.
I leave it altogether?
Yeah.
And that was a lot of years. And to separate that of the power structures and the ways that the power structures were operating from, say, the theology,
Mm-hmm.
or that, like, what of this is theological, what of this is personal, what of this
Mm-hmm.
is power based. It was
Mm-hmm.
a lot of years of trying to parse all that out and figure it
Mm-hmm.
out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm can totally relate to that. I feel like because your my parallel to your world is as you were on all these big stages, I had the same early experiences with integrity songs and just sitting with my guitar in a little circle. All of that is what I was like. I want to just make charts for churches, and so hence started praise charts, and then I found myself planted in this industry, and you got to reconcile with like, well, who am I alongside of this other whole thing that's moving along, and I mean, I think maybe we both probably took different paths in that, but I just um recognized that there was no, you couldn't just say, well, the industry is bad, because it's like it's full of 100 or 1,000 people. There's
Yeah.
lots of good people in it and lots of tyrants. I mean, this is the world we live in, right? So you start to realize that life is messy and full of all different kinds of people, and then got to chart our path our through it. So anyways, this is not about my story, this is about your story, and I really want to hear it. So at some point things break down a little bit. I mean, you stop being on the big stage, or what happened?
Yeah. Well, so through some, I think my artistry didn't really start being noticed on a broad scale until probably Beautiful Things. Like you mentioned, some of the
Mm-hmm.
early songs spread pretty far, but they
Mm-hmm.
were typically spread through other people.
Yeah.
Um, I recorded them, but my recordings of them didn't go very far. But
Yes.
some other people that I knew recorded. But then when we did Beautiful Thing, when I changed the name to Gungor and did the first the Beautiful Things record, is kind of when me
Mm.
as an artist um, started doing more in the world and getting more attention, and that was yeah, that was a wonderful and terrifying and all the things experience. But in that music, that Beautiful Things record is I think where I really first started to really clearly articulate some of the doubt about the whole
Mm-hmm.
thing that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and while that gained a, a fan base of people who are like, "Wow, me too. I have my
Mm-hmm.
own doubts. I have my own questions." There were a lot of people within the industry and just within the church world that were, I think, being a little suspicious, starting to be like, and there was, I remember one blog post that I called out. Uh, I just got done with a big Christian tour that I had witnessed a lot of what I felt as hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that everyone was pretending like we were meeting in these. We did these concerts, worship concerts, in like venues, and then we would say like no alcohol. Um, for the
Right.
shows, but then all the artists and crew and stuff were all drinking alcohol. I was
Right.
like, what is this? We're like performing that we don't drink alcohol,
Yes.
but you do? Like what is
Yeah.
this?
Feels weird.
And there's stuff
Right.
like that. And so I wrote a blog about it that went kind of viral. And that was the first, I think I crossed some lines with some industry people with that
Right.
blog.
Yeah.
Um, and then from there for the next few years there would just be moments where there's like I could feel like excuses to
Hmm.
take like shots at us, like, oh, they're not totally inside here, they're like a
Right.
little
Right.
uh I was vocal about some things that I shouldn't have been vocal
Yes.
about in the
Yes.
industry. um and then I did an interview where somebody asked me about something with creationism and like literal
Mm-hmm.
creationism and
Mm-hmm.
Genesis. And I sort of offhand made a comment like that was something I was struggling, like questioning through in
Yeah.
junior high school. And by the time that we were asked, I was like, oh no, I don't read that literally like that. I'm not like
Right.
a literal creationist theory person.
Right.
Um, and however, it got written up like you'll never believe who doesn't believe the Bible anymore. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
and so multiple things like that, where eventually it became kind of dangerous for the bigger industry door gatekeepers
Yeah.
to have us too associated with. Suddenly, we started noticing some of the big gatekeepers like, okay, we'll have you, but can you sign this declaration of faith that you're exactly like us
Right.
in every
Right.
way?
Right.
Um, and so some of that really turned me off. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why am I trying to be in this party that doesn't want me to be here
Mm-hmm.
unless I am like not like I am? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, the big stage, some of the biggest stages started disappearing when I was more vocal about my
Right.
doubts and my journey through um, searching
Yes.
spiritually. And I went through pretty every kind of phase of like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tried to be Catholic for a while. It was like I'm just not going to believe anything for like there was
Right.
this,
Right.
but it was all seeking God. It was all seeking truth.
Yes.
I
Yes.
I've had recently. I did a worship thing in Austin. There's some questions about and there because people are seeing me do talk more about worship again and even bring I'm writing some worship stuff um and some people have been like, wow, welcome back, it's good to have you back. And I'm like, I never left. Like,
Right. Yes.
you I've been I've been here the whole time.
Yes. Yes.
and and confident that God has been here
Yeah.
the whole time. I never left God.
Yeah.
God never left me. Um, I left the organized machine
Yeah.
and empire,
Yeah. Yeah.
but not even kind of got kicked out too. So I don't.
Yeah.
um,
I wonder if
anyways,
some of what
yeah,
it is that this industry or machine is less comfortable with is the searching, like letting somebody search. And in your case, you were out searching in public, asking questions, but they became
yeah,
inappropriate questions. But it's a disappointing thing for me, and I'm not exposed or talked too openly about things like this. But I will tell you that I highly value giving people the space to search and not being so confronted or offended by the fact that you might not be in the exact same place that I may be, because without searching, without the freedom to search, all you do at best is you end up in some potentially inauthentic place that you don't really believe, and you're just following the crowd that you're believing what is coming from the outside, right? We need to go through the process, and that's just what I'm wanting to say. How much I appreciate about you, but I'm sorry. I mean, you've had to pay the price for that. Um, you've been scorned in some ways, and I feel sorry for that.
well, thank you. At this point where I'm at, like I see it as a gift.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
I'm not hurt about it anymore. So
That's
I
good.
appreciate the love and compassion that you have. But this like uh, I wouldn't trade it what's come of it for anything. So I see
Okay.
it as necessary. To I needed it was what I deconstructed or whatever was not
Yeah.
God. It was my idols.
Right.
It was my idolatry. What was pulled away from me was what I was grasping onto as sin, as attachment, as
Yeah.
idols. And
Yeah.
so the the industry, the power structures saying no to me, and what that took away from my ego and my
Yeah.
own accomplishments and grandeur and power
Yeah.
is precisely what needed to be taken
Yeah.
from from me to be free.
Yeah.
Um, so
So
I'm
good.
just saying, some people I think see where I'm at now and like assume that I'm like hurt or
Mm.
just because I haven't been in like the mainstream stages for some time that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
No.
I'm not hurt. I'm healed. I'm free. I'm happy to uh,
Mm.
be wherever I'm at. Like,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful being able to go back into some of those spaces. Even
Yeah.
um, I got
Mm.
invited to like, or I went with a friend of mine who was preaching at Bethel
Mm.
into Bethel, Austin, and at that worship thing, and was like,
Mm-hmm.
everyone was so lovely, and it was like I was back in a. I hadn't been in like a big worship scene kind of place in some
Yeah.
time. Um, and it felt good to just be happy to be there and to be worshiping
Mm-hmm.
with everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah.
I've been looking at this song, "Beautiful Things," just to kind of transition through this period. I'm just going to show it here on praise charts. Anyways, that the line, "All this pain, I wonder if I'll ever find my way. I wonder if my life could really change at all." Just that opening line. I had made a post about this in my own Facebook just in this morning, and a few of my friends kind of were making some comments about whatever they knew about you. And the one person that really struck me is she said that song, "Beautiful Things," had a major impact on me in my early life, and I'm just seeing that line, "All this pain, I wonder if I could ever find my way." I mean, that obviously came through some pain, and you brought people into a new place. I feel like that song was a marked moment in our history of worship where people were like, "Wow, this song is touching a part of my life that unless you took a risk and exposed some of that pain. We wouldn't have that in our early worship
Mm.
liturgy. So I just noticed that all this pain, like what was that line right there? Where did that come from? Was that this thing that you were wrestling through?
Yeah, a lot of it was that. There was also some more specific.
Yeah.
My wife Lisa and I at that time were trying to have children. We hadn't been able to have
Right.
children for we've been trying for several years.
Yeah.
And we're just kind of in a personal struggle with that. But then, yeah, a lot of it for me, the suffering that I was in was
Yeah.
existential. It was like,
Yes.
what is this? And a lot of the what's in the rest of the record is like,
Yes.
I don't have the strength to believe this stuff anymore. I don't know what's true, what's real, what my role in is in all of this.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of an offering of here. I got a mess to offer. That's what I've got. Can you do
Yes.
anything?
Isn't that like the Psalms are just a mess, aren't they? I
Yeah.
almost feel like how come we're not writing more like the Psalms anymore? Because so many of them would never make it into the big album playlists because they'd be too messy.
Yeah.
But so great.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think that is part of what I would say I like. I think that has some elements of that from what I've seen have been added since the 90s. There was something in the 90s that were kind of like a lot of just scripture would be sung, but not usually like the lament scripture.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
the it was a little cleaner lyrically. And I think in more modern times since then, that has been introduced more than it used to be. And that's one positive thing that has been developed, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something that also comes along with that it can so easily become egoic,
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
all about me, and like
Yes.
balancing that line of like how do we tell the truth and be honest without it veering into um, why would we sing this together. There's an aspect of that I'm always curious about playing with
Yeah.
when we talk about like songs that other people are supposed to sing
Yes.
in church or wherever. It's like if I'm giving this church, what do we want in our mouths? Can we
Hmm.
be honest, but also there's things that are maybe just specific to my own lament that not everybody needs to sing. That can just
Hmm.
be my art. Can those things be? Can they go together somehow? And that to me is an interesting
Hmm.
balance.
Hmm. Well, why don't we lead into that a little bit? Because I know in the last years, or I don't know how long it's been, I've heard about this Mystic Hymnal project that you're working on. Michael Gungor never really, as you have been saying, you never really left the church. It's not like you came and then left and now you're back. There's something in you that has persisted, this worship leader's heart, this hunger for gathering together in community. I mean, I've just been on your Instagram. You've been hungering for church, for community, for gatherings, even small groups. Let's just get together, be together, sit in space. This is part of your hungering heart. And then this Mystic Hymnal project is coming along, which I'm fascinated about. I want to know, where is your heart currently burning for, it's almost like looking back and going, well, how can we get back and harvest the best of what was so great and then learn from this season we've been through? So I'm going to give you that. I'd love to hear your heart for where you're at now.
Thank you. Yeah,
Huh.
that question is probably why I wanted to talk to you guys the most. Is
Yeah.
um, I what I see about 90 when I think about what 90s worship was for me and what I experienced, there was something um, first of all that was about presence more than what I've seen in a lot of modern expressions of. So for some reason, when worship started becoming more popular and like as a movement, and it started selling music and it started filling up big churches, and it became kind of powerful in a consumeristic arena,
Mm-hmm.
in a
Mm-hmm.
capitalistic arena. It seemed like something of the essence became more consumeristic, and I think that even reflects itself theologically. So many songs that I've heard over the last several years they've shifted from God being the destination and the reward of our worship, and I don't want to say object, but the ocean in which we're swimming within our worship, to it being more transactional, where it's like we're thanking God for something that he did in the past, or looking forward to something in the future that he's going to do. And I think in that, we inadvertently, as we made worship music more consumeristic, we theologically became more consumeristic. And even in our services, in the ways that we get together, it became more about power, control. And I think this is where it always has gone off the rail, where religion's always gone off the rails through history, is when it gets mixed up with power. When it gets mixed up, not that it has anything that's beautiful has a power to it, but when that power that's flowing through the worship in the 90s, I think that's why it started becoming so big, is there was an obvious presence and power and something that was happening when we would come together and sing these little simple songs that we didn't have to have huge productions to sing. We didn't have to have even a bunch of screens on the wall, and like we could just sing the simple song over and over and over and just plant in presence together and just sort of soak. Those are the words that we would use in that presence together. And there was something powerful about that I've seen on the bigger industry side of things and the power side of things gets lost. And it becomes, when the songs just become a prelude to the message, or just part of the production to get people in the door or a part of the, even the political marriages that happen within religion. I think all that stuff kills it. And so what I'm trying to do now, I have this project called the Mystic Hymnal, is I'm interested in like, how can we find, because I've talked to so many worship leaders as I kind of healed from some of my church trauma and was like, okay, I think I could actually step foot in churches again. I started visiting churches and trying to find a place. And I was like, I found that since I had left church, a lot of the messages from the preachers that I was visiting had become a little bit grander and more inclusive and more, it wasn't so narrow with some of the sermons that I had used to hear, but the music was still kind of the same as when I left. And I would ask worship leaders, like, why does some of the songs you're still singing, and I could tell that they knew what I was meaning, like that consumeristic thing, the small theologically restrictive thing, rather than like letting go into the ocean of God, more just like this is what's true and this is who we are, and this is like, it felt narrow. And they're like, well, I don't know what to sing. I can't find songs that match what I believe at this point. So I heard it so many times from different worship leaders, and I was like, okay, I know there are songs out there. I've written some. I know of people that have written some. I would like to be a part of collecting some songs that have a little bit more of the Spirit. In some ways, I like the singability of songs in the 90s. There was something about the simple that was powerful, that people didn't have to think too much, and it becomes kind of a meditative sinking into presence technology that we can use. So singable, musical still. I think there's been musical advancements since the 90s that are beautiful, that I'm so glad about when I think about church music, worship music. And so can we keep some beautiful musicality, singable, but also theologically kind? And by theologically kind, what I mean is that not restrictive, not judging, not based in like, do you believe the right dogmas? Are you in? Not making it consumeristic. God did this, and I find a lot of shame kind of latent in a lot of worship music, even if it's not explicitly said. It's kind of like, I'm not worth anything, is kind of felt. Only by the blood of Jesus am I worth anything. I think that's terrible. I think it's very destructive. So theologically kind, that we're welcomed in as we are, with all of our doubts, all of our messiness, and it all belongs, and it's all offered, and the goal of it is the divine heart, is love, is the mystery, and so it's based in love, not fear or shame. And I was like, if I could like create and curate a sort of hymnal, a mystic hymnal of sorts, and this is a long-term project for me, and it's just beginning, but that people, that worship leaders, that people that want group songs, small groups, yoga center, whoever, that's like, we could use music that's for people together, but we don't know where to find stuff that's easily singable, that's musical and beautiful, but also theologically kind. I would like this to be a resource for people. So,
and the reality is, for most people, is they may not just use this music, but at least they would have a library of songs to integrate with other songs that they might pick. And, any worship leader might be thinking, okay, so this is a meal I'm serving. I don't want all meat. I'd like a little salad, some fruit, some dessert. I don't know, just, let's set the table here to reach out to people, to connect with them. And as worship leaders, this is the job that we have, is to know our church. You got to know your theology of your church, know your people. And then, hopefully if you're longing for something, you're not going to say, well, I don't have it. There are no songs that feel like that, and you're offering something that could be a very tangible, real resource. Some maybe just be like one of those. Some might be like, I want it all. I'm going to do the whole service from the Mystic Hymnal, whatever, So, but, it's fascinating to hear your heart and to know where you're coming from, is because it seems like you highly value just the act of being together in a community and singing together. There's something about just like, let's just put theology aside and just say, okay, can we just get some people together and enjoy a presence of acceptance? I'm not saying get rid of theology. I'm just saying there is some value in that. And then can we bring some truth into it? And you're saying some kind truth, some not the kind of truth that's like, you're worthless and you're nothing unless you believe this exact thing, and will you confess it right now and then we can move on, or that kind of mentality. Maybe there's room for a gentler approach. Not everyone would agree with that, but
I would even go farther in saying the truth, the best truth, capital T, that we could ever find in any of our theology, whether it sounds kind or not, is not actually, I think we think of truth as being thought because we're so attached to our minds. We think truth is something that we could say, is something that we can put in a creed, something that we could write on a blackboard. Jesus said, I am the truth, capital T. Yeah. It's a presence. It's life. I am the truth. I am the way, the life. It's encountered. You can encounter truth. You can be encountered by truth. You can be held by truth. You cannot own the truth. Right. You cannot hold the truth even in that way. You can't. It doesn't. It's not small enough for you to put in your hands. It's not small enough for your ego to hold on to and say, I've got it now. Let me tell you what it is. That's an idol. Right. And that's what I'm afraid that we've done sometimes with our worship songs and the way we do it is like, okay, let me offer you my idol. I'm not interested in your idol. Yeah. But I'm interested in in sitting with you in truth, in the person of truth, in the presence, in the being that is truth. And that's what I love about some of the worship songs where it focuses on presence, like the presence of God. And we surrender ourselves into the presence of God, the practice of the presence of God together. And there's something about that is so powerful. When Jesus said, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there. It's like the truth is actually there. When you get together, this is why I'm obsessed with still getting people together. It's not a political aim. It's not even a theological aim. I'm not trying to get everybody to believe my theology about the cross or about the whatever. Like, to me, all those things at best, any words that we use, traditions that we use, the best they can be is fingers pointing to the moon, or is like bring us into the presence of God. That they allow us to surrender, to melt, to offer the not my will but thine be done. That surrender that happens into the presence of God is where I think that's why the Brownsville revival was so powerful for so many people. When I watched that episode that you guys put out, I was like, there's something about that was so, I don't like the word pure in a lot of ways, but I'll say pure in that way, that it's like, because I'm not trying to moralize it, but it was childlike. It wasn't too sophisticated to be like, well, we're going to get these people to believe these things so that our church grows, so that, like, it's all about the future and the past. No, like, it's about now. God lives now. The Spirit is always only found now. Heaven is always only now. And if we're looking for it then, we're going to miss it. The kingdom of heaven is now. It's inside. He said, look within you. So that's what I want to make music that serves that and create spaces that facilitate that.
Yeah. I can see you were just mentioning how it's kind of childlike. And if I think of a child, I mean, how many children are not messy? All that you're describing feels like there's a potential to make a mess.
Totally.
To live in a mess. And I could see how many people are not comfortable in messiness, and then they just want to clean it and organize it and put it in drawers and have it all in boxes and clean in it. It makes sense to me that somebody in the room is going to be feeling uncomfortable with the messiness, and then that is the tension. And if too many people want to clean up the mess and organize it all, then we end up with not the playful, childlike environment that we long for again. And so it's just a constant cycle. The other thing that I think is fascinating.
Can I throw one thing in there?
Go ahead.
I think that's why religion as an empire, when it holds hands with power, crucifies Christ. Not just when it happened on the cross. It's over and over and over. Anytime religion encounters that, because Christ was messy for the power systems. Like, whoa, you're saying things that are going to mess our whole system up.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. Our religious systems, our power systems don't work with love your enemies.
Yeah.
They don't work with, hey, don't worry about tomorrow. You've got everything you need right here. That's not, capitalism can't thrive with that. Nothing about the empire, about the religious systems can thrive with the sort of simplicity that Jesus brings of like, hey, if you want to know what I'm talking about, you got to be like a little kid. Look at the birds.
Yeah.
Look at, like, just sit here with me, be here with me. That doesn't, it's too human for the monstrosity of the empire. So yes, that's always going to be crucified by, what the ironic thing is, now it's been crucified over and over by the people that claim the name of Jesus as well and have made that into the religion and power system. But I don't think, I'm concurring with that messiness is never going to be accepted by the powers that be.
Another reality is, it seems if you would look back in history, so Jesus came, you're in the zeros, the 100s, and then we go up to, I think, Constantine, and I'm not a huge historian, but I know that around that era, it was a lot about power, and let's organize this, let's contain it, and then we sort of go through that, and we lead up to the 1400s, and other historians will know much more than I. But it seems like there is a cycle in history of mess, power, organization, and then crumble, and then mess, and then we just kind of keep going around. And don't you think, Michael, that your Mystic Hymnal eventually could confront the powers of power. Like what if it became all so popular and now
Right.
some big publisher wants to sign you because they see that everybody wants it, and now we're starting the cycle again.
Right.
So don't think that you're not just at the beginning of another circle. Every wheel keeps going around. So don't fool yourself. But how do we break that? How do we get free of just thinking, well, I'm just at the bottom of something that's going to go up to the top? Just give it time. I don't know.
I think what we have to do to be free of it is be willing to walk away when we need to. I think that's when you see Jesus even.
Mm-hmm.
There were moments the crowd started gathering and he'd just peace out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm out.
Yeah.
That level of non-attachment, like if you're there, if you're like, I need to spread the good news to the whole earth, and you finally have a crowd, why are you leaving? Jesus, like if you're Jesus's manager,
Yes.
what are you doing?
Well, isn't that what the disciples were saying?
Stay here.
The disciples were pulling
This is your
Jesus
moment.
aside and saying, we're trying to build a movement here, and you're kind of working against
Yeah.
us. Right?
Yeah. So I think that really it's first of all, we can't ever trust the movement itself. We can't ever trust like sales, popularity, views have nothing to do with the aliveness of something. Really.
Yeah.
Like if something's alive, it might tend to start getting views and but if you hold on, if you then shift your focus and you kind of like put your hands on it,
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually, the like power corrupts. I don't think it's actually power in itself. Like the fact that something is popular or I don't think it's inherently then evil or needs to bad or whatever. But as soon as you grab onto it, it's going to be destructive. Like as soon as you're like, and you start making decisions for the power rather than the aliveness.
Yes.
If that makes any sense, like it's like as soon as you're like, well, now this is a business and people aren't going to like it if it's dead. Now you're strangling it. It's going to die.
Yeah.
And it's back in the circle and everything dies. So that's okay. But I think how we avoid just being looped around in that loop ourselves is by being willing to let go when we need to let go.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, full confession, I was even a little nervous about having this conversation with you because I thought, what is this going to bring out of me that might expose me or, that I like, what if people are like, oh my goodness, did you see Ryan was having a friendly conversation with Michael Gungor? Have you heard of that guy? Do you know what he stands for? And, all that it was going but so it's a bit risky to do that. But then, like I said, at the very outset, I just wanted you to know how drawn I am. Because even if it's not in theology, maybe it's in like everything about praise charts or in my life, I'm constantly trying to break boxes around like the norms of life. People in my world know that Ryan's going to come up with some other way to think about this thing. I just feel open to, that's the way everyone does it. Well, let's look for something else. That's the way everyone thinks. I'm going to try. This is the world of innovation, and there can be spiritual innovators, faith innovators. Well, Jesus was an innovator and he was like breaking the box. And so, I'm attracted to it. And yet, this is how we all can kind of feels like I'm attracted to it, but I don't want anyone to know. Like, don't tell anyone. And how many people might be listening in on this conversation going, I really enjoyed that conversation, but don't
Can't
tell
share
anyone.
it with my friends.
Right?
I was funny. I had a podcast called the Liturgist Podcast. And so many people that I would meet would be like, I love the podcast. I can't tell anybody at my church that I listen to it, but I enjoy it. And it's like, it's a pretty common thing in my life. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the courage.
Yeah. Well, and
that
maybe
you're exhibiting by even just having a conversation with me. I think, again, I think the world needs more people that are willing to have conversations, even with people that aren't exactly the same and think exactly the same. Like when that shuts down, it turns into war. That's what happens. And so I appreciate your willingness and courage.
And I want to say, like, this isn't, I'm not just trying to protect myself, but this isn't about whether I agree with everything you're saying. What things I value is I value curiosity. I value the search, the giving people permission to explore and to, you know, find and go through their own cycle of life. I certainly value friendly conversation and not just putting all our walls up. And I wish that more people could allow themselves to enter conversations like this with people where they're like, oh, I don't know, you know, because I don't agree with them or they don't believe in this specific thing. It doesn't devalue you as a person or us to have this conversation. So that's kind of like the heart. Let's have this world filled with a little more peace and love, community, and grace, right? So.
Yeah, and I don't even think you need to be. It's not like you need to just be like a hippie, liberal, whatever, to make room for other people. You like the idea that salvation is God's is very orthodox.
Yeah.
But we like to not accept that like what people's journey with God is needs to look a certain way. That's what within the empire we're like, it's a little messy for you to ask that question or to go that way and to hold that theological position. We're like, we sit in the judgment seat and say, well, that can't be part of the journey if it was God. I know from within the journey that my journey with God demanded at parts me totally letting go of what I thought God was, including like, okay, I'm not going to believe in God. I can't necessarily explain that to everybody how that was the most faithful act to God in that moment. Right. But I see that it was, which gives me at this place room to like not assume anything about what you should be or anybody should be doing in their journey. I don't know where you should be, what your process and road of salvation looks like for you. How could I possibly know? That's not my job. End of story. It's just basic humility. It's just not even, it's barely worth calling humility. Just not the most grandiose narcissism of all time of thinking that you can be God and judging what the salvation is. Like, who do you think you are? So to me, that gives me grace, not just for myself of like where I'm at today, but how am I supposed to know where you should be today? And just that basic human to human, like, where are you at? And that's not my job to think that you should be somewhere else.
Yeah, it's good. Well, you know, the net sum of it all is that I'm still talking to a guy. Clearly, Michael, you've been impacted by some rich jewels that came out of this 90s era of worship. And we're trying to look back and remember the good things. And even, it's not to say there's tremendous great things that are happening in our current modern times of worship. And for you listening in, it's your job as worship leaders to figure out who are you going to be to curate together, every Sunday, some kind of authentic experience for your people in their context to gather together in community. And this interview speaks that, Michael, you still love just bringing together, whether it's a dozen or six or maybe a couple hundred with your acoustic guitar. I mean, I watch you on Instagram. You were just doing that whatever song about peace be with you. I was like, oh man, that's an amazing song. I would love to sing that song. But I see that in your heart, and I just affirm that and acknowledge that. So grateful for you and your story.
Thank you. Grateful for you too.
All right. Well, this has been a good one. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for those of you listening in. If you bared through right to the end of this, God bless you for that. And just keep your heart open. Keep your heart full of grace. Keep searching for the truth. And hopefully it's the presence kind of truth that you really find. I think that was a great word. And thank you, Michael. So this is Ryan Dahl, Michael Gungor from the 90s Worship Podcast. Signing off. See you at the next one.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. Bye then.